Oh, Patty, thank you. Oh, you don't have a mic. Okay. Welcome. Okay. Sorry you can't converse, but you can write in the chat here, and you're welcome to introduce yourself through the chat because everyone can read it. And Anandi, how is life in Maui? You also don't have a microphone? How come nobody has microphones? You can if you turn your video on, Anandi, you can use you can use sign language. But I'm not seeing any microphone icon. Seems like you don't have a microphone. Patty's in the Stone Age. Oh, we got a guest from the ancient past. Very interesting. And Advaita, welcome. What about you? Anandi is connecting to audio, apparently. That looks promising. Welcome, Advaita. Okay, folks. So, Patty, do you want to tell us where you are? And you can do that in the chat, and we can see that. That'd be nice. I know you're in the Stone Age. That's when you are, but where are you? Tacoma, Washington State. Very nice. No, is that Washington State? Or I don't understand American abbreviations. It is. Okay. I get confused between Washington, D.C. and Washington State. Anandi, now I can see you. Do you want to turn your microphone on? Unmute yourself. How did you hear about us, Patty? I'm curious. Anandi's figuring out how to unmute herself. You don't know how to unmute yourself? If you on the Zoom screen, if you look down on the left, there should be a little mute button on your lower left. Oh, you get on my emailing list. Oh, thank you. That's Patty. Thank you. Well, I'm very happy to meet you. Okay, so we have a nice little group here, and in addition to this group, just so you know, there's a bunch of people seeing the streaming on Facebook and YouTube. So there might be 8 or 10 of us here, but there's probably another 20 out there somewhere. There you go, Anandi. Now I can hear you.
Namaskar, Dada.
Welcome. So tell us, how's life in Maui? How's everybody?
Beautiful, beautiful. So busy.
Yeah?
Yeah, we are very busy. How is life in California?
Well, apart from, the end of the world from 6 different directions, we're fine. We've got, a global plague and an economic collapse and an insane president, and then we have fires. But actually, I'm fine. But I wish I could say the same for everyone else.
Are you far away from the fire?
Well, now we are. There was a fire came quite close to us. It was only about 5 miles away, and we got an evacuation warning, but then it didn't. The wind changed direction. But a lot of people, about 5,000 homes have been burnt. 4 million acres of California has been burnt.
Wow.
That's like all of Hawaii.
Oh,
more than once. It's a huge area. So it's a giant problem, and it's not going to stop for several months because we're just in the beginning of the fire season. So apart from that, I'm fine. It's been very strange in many ways, as you all know.
yeah.
We've had a very, very strange year so far.
Cosmic play.
Yeah. So some part of some giant, wonderful cosmic drama, and let us see if we can. Oh, you're looking at my book.
Well, what happened? I have to teach. I have to teach meditation. I have to teach meditation. That's why I'm here. I want to get some ideas from you for my teaching.
Oh, okay. Well, you're welcome. There's lots of. Oh, your wonderful Christy has been joining our planetary leadership training.
Yeah.
So dedicated. Just so the rest of you, to bring you up to speed, there's a big program I'm a part of called Planetary Leadership Training. We started in really April in response to the fact that everyone's stuck at home, not just here in the US where I am, I'm in California, but all over the world. And so through our Ananda Marga Meditation sort of Society network, we started this program of classes it was initially for young people, like under 30s, to help them get established in their meditation and yoga lifestyle and learn more. And it just kind of took off. So we now have more than 250 students. We're just finishing the third course that we're running for the older group. And we're just going to launch a program for all of our teachers. And then next year, we're planning all kind of stuff. So I'm going to tell you about that. Actually, it's a part of today's class a bit later on. But anyway, why am I talking about that? Because there's some reason for it. Oh, because in Maui, there's one of yours. Is she your student, Christy?
Yeah.
Right. She's
Yeah.
like, she has been joining us it was initially 6 days a week, and now it's 3 days a week and just finishing. But she's been joining us at 3 a.m.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. And she's been doing like one of our most regular students. And now she's going to volunteering to help distribute some funds that we've raised to different service projects. And her reward is she gets to give away money.
She wants to give away money.
That's the job. Now we've asked the students to volunteer for different things, because this whole thing's been
probably a little secret, Ada. She was elite in the Olympics.
She was what? An elite in the Olympics?
Yes. You didn't know that, huh?
That's why she's there at 3 a.m. Discipline. Oh my God. What was her sport?
Rowing, some kind of water sports.
Which water sports?
Rowing.
Rowing. Like a crew, like a rowing. Okay, it's competitive. Yeah,
row
awesome.
The boat dancing gently down the street.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, that's impressive. We have an Olympian in our class. Okay, very cool. I would love to. I'm gonna. I'm not gonna be able to keep that secret.
Don't tell.
No, I'm gonna research it and find out all the details. No, she's really great. Okay, so we're gonna launch into a little meditation, and Patty is new today, and Al was here with us last week, but I think maybe that was the first time. So a couple of you are quite new, and others, we've got the whole spectrum. And then there's all the unknown mystery people out there on Facebook and YouTube. So welcome everybody. Namaskar, that's a greeting we use in our tradition. And it goes like this, with the hands, and you touch this, the head, the chakra, the eyebrow, just between the eyebrows and the heart. And it's like a greeting. So it means I greet the divine within you with all of my mind and all of my heart. That's a kind of fancy way of saying hello. And during this crazy COVID-19 time, it's becoming a little more fashionable, because shaking hands is not really cool anymore, right? So everyone's going around doing namaste and namaskar and all that. It's getting a boost. Now, we're going to do meditate together. We're using a mantra, which is something you may or may not, most of you are familiar with, but I'm just going to make sure you all are up to speed on this. So to do that, I'm going to share my screen for a minute. Wait a second. Okay, I'm going to share my screen just for a little while. And there you will see this lovely mantra. And this mantra looks like that. So it has 3 words, Baba, Nam, Kevalam. And my favorite translation of this is that there's only this feeling of limitless love. So the idea in meditation, and this is like the super condensed version of how to meditate, the baby steps version, how to meditate with a mantra like this. The idea is that our mind needs something to focus on. If we're going to still our minds, at least to some degree, we need to focus on one idea or one thing. So we use the mantra for that. And so we're focusing on the mantra and repeating it in the mind. And we'll start off by singing it for a little while. And then I'll guide you into a silent meditation using the mantra. And the whole sort of music and guided part will take about 10 minutes, and then we'll meditate in silence for about 20 minutes. So you know what's coming up. And after that, I will go into this topic. So once a month, I've scaled it back to once a month. It was every week up until recently. But once a month, I then do a sort of a 1 hour class, which is more in depth. So the topic for this week or this month's class is the power of purpose. I have this power of series. I'll tell you a bit about that later. So we're going to go into this meditation. And so when you're meditating with a mantra, there are two things happening really. One is the sound itself. So the sound of the mantra, the resonance of the sound and the music when they're combined, it helps to create a feeling of calm. And it can also, it kind of wakes up or stimulates, usually, it's got a kind of positive emotion. And then the idea behind it, this idea of this feeling of limitless love, it's obviously a very positive idea. So this, having this idea attached to the mantra, leverages this power of the mind to kind of create a feeling from an idea. So if you think about somebody you love or a place you love, you automatically feel good. So the thought can change the way you feel. And so we can use our thought. It's kind of like if you're driving a car, and emotions are like the engine. Emotions like are really powerful, but they're kind of going on in the background. And if we don't control them, it can be problematic. But your thoughts are like the steering wheel. You can actually direct your thoughts and choose what to think about. I mean, it's not always easy. It's often, you get distracted and the mind wanders, but you can get some degree of control. And as you learn to concentrate, you get better at that. And if you think in a particular way, if you do it the right way, your feelings tend to follow. And repetition is the key. That's why everyone that teaches you about meditation will tell you, okay, maybe it's a little difficult in the beginning, but if you practice regularly, even if it's for a short time, as long as you do it regularly, you'll find that you get better at it. Like anything, like learning a language or learning the piano or, pretty much anything. So we are training our minds to behave better. And that's the simple version, right? So if your attention wanders, if you find it difficult to concentrate, don't worry. That is super normal. Like just about everybody experiences that. It's not a problem. It doesn't mean you can't meditate. Just the act of asserting your will to bring your attention back to the mantra once, it's like a push-up. It's like a mental push-up. If you do that a few times, each time you meditate, you'll build up this concentration muscle and you will improve. So don't worry if you find that you really mind wanders a lot and a lot of thoughts coming. That's meditation, actually. That's what it's like for most people, especially in the beginning. So it's a very natural process. Okay, so we're going to start with a little music, and I have my microphone on, but I have actually want to make sure you turn your microphones off. In fact, I can do it for you. Oh, no, I can't. I'm just asking you to mute. The reason is, if you sing along, which you're welcome to do, if you sing along, there's this delay because it's all going through the internet and it takes time, and everything's out of time and it's a big mess. So don't have your microphone on. You're welcome to sing. All right. It's not that we don't want to hear you. It's just that we're not going to be in sync and it doesn't work very well. Okay, so let's see how you're sitting. I want you to make yourself comfortable. Close your eyes. Take a couple of deep breaths. Relax. And we're going to sing this mantra in a moment. Remember the meaning, the feeling behind the mantra. is that there's only this feeling of limitless love. So you're kind of tapping into or connecting to the source of love within yourself, all right? So I'll sing the mantra for, yeah, I'm not sure how long, 5 to 10 minutes, depends how I feel. And I've got to remember the tune I was going to sing. Oh, this is it. There, yeah, just relearn this tune that I really like, that I learned from some. Baba Nama Kerala. Oh, wait on. I've got to do one thing. I just realized I've got this Zoom software has a feature which makes the guitar sound horrible, and I have to do something to disable it. Why is it not working? Uh-oh. Just trying to escape here. Okay, I've got to switch it off because it makes my voice sound better, but it makes the guitar sound weird, and I don't like that. And I need to change it. And I'm not getting, I know what I've got to do. I've got to stop sharing. That's it. Okay. Now we can enjoy the lovely guitar sound as it's supposed to sound, a little bit more. Okay. All right, so just close your eyes and just feel that you're kind of communicating with your inner self, or connecting to your the part within you where the love comes from, and as you go into this place, find that there is no boundary to this feeling. Baba Nama Kerala, Baba Baba Nama Kerala, Baba Baba Nam Kerala, Baba Nam Kerala, Baba Nam Kerala, Baba Nam Kerala. Bhavanam Kevla Bhavanam Kevala Bhavanam Kevala Bhavanam Kevla Bhavanam Kevla Bhavanam keep your eyes closed and let the mantra and the music continue in your mind as though you were hearing it or listening rather than repeating it in your mind with your will. So you're letting the mantra and the music continue kind of automatically. It's running along by itself, all right? And then begin to feel that this music and this mantra is coming from a deep place within you, as though your inner self was singing to you. Some voice from your soul, if you like, from the deeper part of you, is singing to you and drawing your attention inward, bringing you to this place deep within you, which is the source of all the love you've ever felt. And as you come to that place and you merge into that feeling within you, you become immersed in this feeling of love. You realize that it has no boundary. It has no limits. It's within you, without you, stretching off in all directions to an infinite distance. And this is the spirit of this mantra Bhavanam Kevalam. There's only this feeling of limitless love. And that's the place where you want to come to in your meditation. And if other thoughts come and your mind wanders, don't worry, that's very natural. But when you notice that, just bring your attention back to the mantra and let it draw you into this place where there's this feeling of limitless love. And we're just going to meditate on that in silence now for about 20 minutes. So you can just keep your eyes closed for a second. Take a deep breath. And breathe out and relax. Bring your palms together over your heart. And you can open your eyes. Welcome back, everybody. So I want to explore this idea today about the power of purpose. So to do that, I'm going to share my screen. Let me see. Oh, and first, before I do that, wait. And I'm going to turn up that. Okay. Now I'm going to share my screen. Now, just a couple of things about how I like to do this. You're welcome to ask questions as we go along. That is not a problem, but you can ask them in the chat. And if you want to turn your mic on and we get into a discussion, that's also fine, because we're a small group. So don't worry about having, don't think you have to be super polite and wait till the end before asking a question, because then you might have forgotten it. So you're welcome to ask questions, or if you've got something interesting to tell us that's relevant, we would probably be really interested, because we would like to know about you as well as just what I've got to say, or whatever pictures I'm going to show you and so forth. So feel free to join in either through the chat or by unmuting your microphone, and you do have the power to do that. Excuse me. We've had a bit of smoke in the air in California in the last few weeks, so it's given me a bit of a cough, but nothing serious. So this is part of a series that I've been developing, and many of you have helped me with your ideas and feedback on the secret powers of meditation. And initially I thought, I guess I can think of 10 of these. So I came up with 10, and I completed that series, and I've got recordings of all of that. I think they're all available on Facebook somewhere. But then afterwards I thought, well, okay, that was nice, but actually I have more. So I've got about at least another 10 secret powers of meditation, which I'm going to be writing up and delivering once a month. So that'll keep me occupied for the next 10 months or so. So this is the next one, and this one is the power of purpose. And don't you like my little plant there? Isn't it cool? Of course, we've all seen this, right? Isn't it amazing how a little seed can push its way through asphalt or even concrete, which is much harder. So, but it's determined. It wants to get to the sun, and it's been driven by its instinct and the power of nature, and it's got a clear purpose. So the power of purpose, if you're really focused, should not be underestimated. In fact, now it's not quite the same thing, but you might have heard of Shiva. Shiva was the father of the whole spiritual yoga tradition from 7,000 years ago. He was the first great enlightened yogi. According to legend, he's also been mythologized, and you'll see images of supposedly Shiva in Hindu mythology with 4 arms, and I think there's a river coming out of his head or something, and he's got the moon in his hair. Now that's a metaphor, you could say. That's not to be taken literally, in my opinion, but he was actually a human being who had, you could say, the world's first enlightened man, and he taught. There is some record. It's been passed down through word of mouth, but there is some record of his teachings, and one of them is a teaching where his wife Parvati, one of his wives, he had 3 wives. One of his wives was asking him some questions, and it was a dialogue between them. And there's one where he talks about the 7 secrets of success. And the first of those is firm determination. So I reckon this little plant had that one down. Very determined, got what it wanted. So the sense of purpose can be very powerful. But also for human beings, of course, we're not plants, though we may share a few things with them, quite a lot of things. But for human beings, one of the things that I find very remarkable about purpose, is the sense of purpose. I want to feel that my life has a purpose. And this is something a lot of people express, and it seems to be a very fundamental drive in human beings, which brings me to something about human nature. There is this concept in yoga philosophy known as dharma. And this wheel, what this is, it's actually on the flag of India, a version of this. But this is the wheel of dharma. It symbolizes what is known as our true nature. Dharma literally means the true nature. Broadly speaking, it means the true nature of anything. So the true nature of a little seed is to sprout and grow no matter what and reach for the sun, right? But it's more generally used in relation to what is a human nature, the true nature of human beings. And we're driven by this. Of course, we have our instinctive nature. We have a desire for food and the sustenance and a safe place to rest, and we have an instinct to procreate and take care of our children and so forth. And we have a fear instinct. These are sort of fundamental human drives. But what you could say sets us apart from the animal world and the plant world is that we have another set of natural drives, which are what's called our Bhagavad Dharma, our divine nature. As in the Bhagavad Gita, in case you've read that, that's the song, the divine song. So Bhagavad Dharma is our divine nature. And there are 4 of these drives, you could say. One is the drive to expand. Vistara actually is one of them. This Vistara Circle is this program that I'm connected with that is sponsoring, in a sense, this series. So Vistara, the desire to expand our minds and to reach for the stars, all this kind of thing, to explore. So that's one of our, one aspect of our divine nature. Another is the desire to find, it's almost like when we emerged from the sort of instinct-dominated animal world through evolution, and we something new awoke in us, you could say, our more developed intellect and intuition and so forth. But we also lost something. The other living things, they may have problems, struggles, and they don't have the abilities of human beings, and certainly the mental abilities. But they're not typically in conflict with themselves. And we have this kind of gift and a curse, if you like, that we have these 2 sides of our nature, and we are we're always torn between one direction and another, and these 2 sides of our nature actually conflict with one another often. And so we have this desire to rediscover that lost harmony that we had when we were living in nature. And that's what the Christian Garden of Eden mythology, symbolism is all about. It's, that was like the paradise was when we weren't in conflict with ourselves. And then, the naughty snake came along and the girl ate the apple and all of that, and blame it on the girl, usual story. And she and then the curse of knowledge, of the knowledge of good and evil, that symbolizes our dual nature. So we have this free will, and that creates conflict. So the curse of choice, if you like. We're experiencing it right now in our election here in the United States. Not two inspiring choices, but one clearly better than the other, in my view. But we have this we've lost this sense of harmony with nature. So we want to get it back, and our desire for that is called rasa. So that's the second of our of the aspects of our nature, our divine nature, our Bhagavad nature. The third is the desire to, it's called seva, means service, the desire to do something for others. And, we are tribal creatures, you could say. We're very deeply, instinctively tribal. And we do have a very powerful desire to cooperate with other human beings and to help other human beings. And as we develop our spiritual nature, that expands. We have this desire to, a feeling of love, a feeling of empathy, a feeling of connection with all living things, and the desire to serve the universe, not just the living universe, all of the world is an expression of our higher nature, our divine nature. And the last, or the fourth aspect of our divine nature is what we call moksha, which means the desire for final freedom, for liberation, from freedom from all suffering, and to experience and merge with the infinite. That's what's driving us from our deeper nature. So what does that mean in terms of our own sort of life purpose? So we have this general dharma, this like human dharma, and it's common to all humans. Not to be confused with religion, by the way. A lot of people say, oh, we follow Hindu dharma or we follow Buddhist dharma. This is actually a contradiction. There's no such thing as a Hindu dharma. There's human dharma. Dharma is one for everyone. It's not divided up like religions are. Dharma is common. So we have this common dharma as human beings, but each of us is a unique individual. And we also have this personal dharma, our personal nature and our personal purpose. And that is known as, if my little machine will obey me, okay, our prana dharma. So prana means life force. So what is your life path, if you like? Because dharma is sometimes translated as, the path to enlightenment, or, your life path. So what's your life path, your life purpose? What were you born for? This is what the prana dharma is about. This individual that is you, that is an expression of the power of life and nature and consciousness. What are you for? What's your purpose? What's the point? All right. So different individuals, try in different ways to find out what our purpose is. What's the meaning of life? Why am I here? All these fundamental questions. And, people have wondered about this for a long time. Often we get distracted by external stuff and we forget about it. But often people go through their whole life doing things in the world. And at the end of their lives, they reflect on their life purpose. And sometimes they conclude that they perhaps didn't really fulfill it in the way that they could have. So better to reflect on it early rather than when it seems a little bit too late. So we're going to explore that. And I want to explore it mainly through the lens of stories. So, because there are different ways of viewing your life, but in a way you could view your life as a story. And you're the hero or heroine of your story. And the thing about meditation and yoga and following this spiritual path is that what you learn on this path is how to kind of take control of your story and direct it in a way that it will bring you fulfillment, where you'll discover your true purpose and you will actually fulfill what you were born for. And this, if you're able to do this, you can live an extraordinary life. So I would start off by telling you just a little snapshot of what I feel to be my purpose, because I'm the one talking. Okay, just to give you an example of what it feels like. So what's my purpose? So when I was pretty young, and some of you know something about my story, I grew up in New Zealand, which is a nice place to live. It's really, everybody likes New Zealand, pretty much. Nobody knows anyone who got mugged by a New Zealander. New Zealand is a pretty peaceful lot generally. Though I actually grew up there, and I do know someone who got mugged by a New Zealander now that I think about it. But it was unusual, and it wasn't like there were no weapons involved. It was a fairly mild mugging, if you like. But I grew up in this peaceful place, and it was in a way, as far as you can, as far as it goes, it's one of the more idyllic places that I've seen, and I've been to more than 50 countries. There's a few others, but that's one of them. But I was dissatisfied because I felt like there's got to be more than just living a nice life in this, in this nice environment with reasonably decent people. because I was very aware of the bigger world and that there were problems in the world, and I sort of had this desire to. I know I didn't think I could solve the problems of the world, but I'd like to see something happen. So when I learned meditation, one big realization I had was that this meditation practice and all the techniques and lifestyle that surround it, this gives me the power to change myself. I can actually use this to become more like the person I'd really like to be. And that became a big part of my life purpose, was to really try and evolve towards the person that I wanted to be. And the other side of it was that I wanted to really do something, as much as I could. I'm just one person, but do something that would leave something good in the world. And then I discovered Ananda Marga, which means the path of bliss, this spiritual path. And the motto of Ananda Marga is Atma Mokshatang Jagahitaya Cha. It means self-realization. It's realizing your true potential as an individual and service to the universe. Doing something with your life, in your life, and giving with the gifts you've been given, giving back whatever you can. And that really it defined my life purpose. And I adopted that as my path. So I didn't have to make that up. I came across teachings and an amazing spiritual guru who had a better idea, a clearer idea of what my life purpose was than I did. Now that's the general life purpose. Now I've got my version of that, and it involves music and teaching and I had an interesting conversation just the other day. We were doing ironically, I live in Silicon Valley in California, and this is the land of, technology and commerce and business and all of that. So I'm sort of in this strange space between spiritual teaching and the world of innovation and technology. And a little group of us are starting a company, and our purpose is, we're just getting it clear. We're trying to figure out what our purpose is. But what we're in agreement on is that, yes, we all feel that spiritual development is very important. We all are into meditation in some form. And we want to use our skills to make a difference in the business world, in the business community as a consulting company, or your consulting group. But we're trying to figure out our brand. And we did this amazing exercise. We were really exploring what do I really want? What's my goal in life? What I want to do? And of course, that tied in nicely with this topic. So, and I was asked, okay, what is it that you really want to do in your life? And I managed to sum it up in a way that I hadn't before. And it was simply, I want to help people connect to the source of love within themselves. And then the second part of it is, and this was kind of more new to me, that I've had clear for a long time, but the second part of it was, I want them to find their prana dharma, their life purpose, and try to empower and enable them to fulfill it, so that they can bring their gifts to the world, and that will magnify the little impact I might be able to have on somebody's life if something wakes up inside them. So that was really powerful to me. So that was kind of it was a little kind of realization about what I'm here for. So I have a question for all of you, and I want you to consider this, and that is simply this question: what is your purpose? All right, and we're going to revisit this further down, but I just want you to give this an initial stab at this. And if you have pen and paper or something on your computer you can write, I want you to write down your first thought of, okay, what's my life's purpose? What am I here for? What was I born for? And some of you might have it very clear, and some of you might still be unclear. Some people go through their whole lives and it might change, or it's not really clear. So there's no expectation. You may or may not want to share it with us. It's entirely up to you. If you do want to share it, please write in the chat. But I want to give you a minute or two to just write down what's your first run at this. What's your purpose? What do you feel is your reason to be here? I'm going to jump out of this sharing for a minute. so that we can see one another. And I'd like to, if anyone wants to share anything, say anything about that, I'd love to hear that. Or you want to write something in the chat? Anyone dare? By the way, Yulin, you joined us. I don't know if you've joined us before, have you? You came in, I think.
It's my first time.
Oh, okay. Welcome. Well, since we have you, why don't you quickly tell us who you are, where you are, how you got here?
I live in Fremont, California, and I practice the meditation with Zana every morning. So I know.
Sorry? Oh, Yana.
Zana.
Jana. Oh, she's such a good friend. She's the most wonderful musician, isn't she?
Yeah, she mentioned about you very often. So
okay.
I'm happy that I can see you virtually.
Well, you're very welcome. Thank you for joining us. And I'm, I'm so fond of Yana. We're really good friends, and we sometimes sing together. She's the most incredible singer and musician.
Yeah, we are supposed to have the book discussion tonight. As you know, that we discuss about your book.
Oh, I forgot. Yeah, that's right. You were at a study circle studying my book. You close your eyes and open your mind. That's right.
Yeah, that's the one.
Well, I hope you like it.
Yeah, I
Is
like
it all right?
I like it, but a lot of concept or ideas, I'm get confused, and I think probably that's because English is not my mother language, so somehow it's hard for me to really comprehend the exact meaning of the thing.
So what is your mother language?
Mandarin.
Ah, I happen to have a Chinese translation of this book.
Oh, okay. Because I have been practice yoga for a while, and when I was in Taiwan, I went to the Namaskar the center in Taiwan. So
Great.
And so I read some books like yoga philosophy, but in Chinese. So
yeah, it's easier, of course. I mean, I can't imagine. I can't understand Chinese at all. So, so thanks for joining us. I just want to respond to some of the comments here. So we got a few really cool. So pranadharma. So Krishnendu is saying your pranadharma is to realize the infinite nature of your atman, or your soul. So atman means, it roughly translates as soul, or the inner I, the inner self. And from Anandadev, self-actualization of your unique individual potentials, and apply them to promote the collective good. Okay, so these are nice and broad, but we're going to work on narrowing this down a bit, getting a bit more specific. Okay, let's go forward with the story. So we're going to go back to our screen. Where am I? So I'm going to tell you a little bit about, just a kind of a current, it's kind of, well, I talked about getting specific. So my purpose is that's very broad, okay? And that's actually just a kind of expression of the common Dharma. It's not really my prana Dharma. Prana Dharma would be, this is actually another way of expressing the Dharma for all people. It's just an interpretation of that. But what's my purpose? So really, right now, it's very specific. I'm working, on something called planetary leadership training. And it's a training program for, initially it was for young people. I'm doing it in collaboration with some other teachers. We've been running it for 4 months now. And we've had more than 250 students altogether. It's global, of course, because it's all online. And it's been exciting. And we've run 1, 2, 3 courses already. You can see them here. So Planetary Leadership Training 1, there was a big group of young people they were all mostly under 30. And it was about, all of the people so far joining this, they're already meditating. They're already part of this movement. So we're kind of reinforcing and expanding their practice and their understanding. So we've got this amazing team of now it's almost 50 volunteers. This whole thing's nonprofit. We charge a little bit of money, but now we're about to employ a manager for the whole project. But there's not much money there. So we ran the Planetary Leadership Training 1, and then when it was finishing after 2 months, and this was 6 days a week, they're coming in for 2.5 hours every day, 6 days a week for 2 months. So it was a lot of time. And I was just telling Anandi, who's with us today, her student, Christy, lives in Maui in Hawaii, where Anandi is. Because of the time zones, she had to join us at 3 a.m, 6 days a week, and she did that consistently. So we're really impressed by her. Anyway, we had all different people all around the world, from Vietnam. We have a few from Taiwan, from Indonesia, Brazil, Italy, Portugal, all over the world. A lot from the US, but we really had more than 20 countries. And then we ran a program for the older members. That's this third one, and that's still running. The big group is about 70 coming 3 days a week. Then we have open weekends. We have actually a weekend program it's a one day weekend, half a weekend on Saturday. And then we've got a program which is, there's a service, somebody some years ago got an inheritance, and they put that in an investment fund, and the profit from that, a group of us have to distribute it every year to different service projects. So we're asking our students to help us decide what it should go for, to train them in the utilization of funds. That's part of the training. It's not a lot of money. We're talking I don't know, I think we give away $10,000 a year or $20,000 or something. But it's good practice, right? And then now we're just about to launch a training for our teachers, and then we've got a marketing manager who is offered to run a training for our team in how to market effectively, so we can bring this to the public. And then we've got a monthly get together and a youth program, and these are all launching in the next 3 months. Actually, this one will be next year. And then we're fantasizing. This is my ideas for next year. We're going to create a filmmakers cooperative. We're going to run an arts program, sort of spiritual arts. We're going to run a program on how to develop land communities, on permaculture and water management and organic farming. We're going to have a cooking course, a creative writing retreat. So all of this stuff's going on. So I'm just using this as a kind of example of something that really aligned with what I feel to be the reason I'm here. So there are 3 of us directing this, but we've got, and it's kind of like I feel we're in this groove, and it's sort of what happens if you can find somehow and you're able to do something that's really aligned with what you feel to be your purpose or destiny. It's an amazing feeling. So as you can tell, I'm super excited about this because it's aligned with what I believe in and my values and my purpose. So that's just like a personal example from, and I've had different instances of this through my life, but this is a very current one for me. So this is getting more specific. This is my one expression of my prana dharma, my specific purpose, and it's different for everybody. But though there happen to be 2 other people working really hard, much harder than me, I'm the lazy one, but they're working on this with me, so we all feel that this is our purpose, right? And if you can, that's what makes a team really successful. If you can align with a team of people that really feel from their hearts that they've got the same goal and same values, then it flows. And that's what we were doing in the other exercise I talked about. We were developing this branding exercise because, teamwork is very important. So that's kind of example. Now, I said that I'm talking about storytelling. You may have heard of Joseph Campbell. I've talked about him in this course. I know some of you have, and some of you may have read his books. His most famous book probably was The Hero with 1,000 Faces. And he was a great mythologist, an extraordinary scholar, and a deeply spiritual man. He's passed away now, but his writings, and he wrote many books, his writings explored this idea of the journey of the hero or heroine. And he studied the mythologies of the world, from all imaginable cultures, from indigenous cultures, from tribal cultures, from India and China and Europe and Greece and the Incas and the Christian myths and all these different mythologies. And he wrote this book called The Hero with a Thousand Faces. And he said, all of these sort of journey stories, if you read the Odyssey from the Greek mythology, from Homer, or if you read the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is one of the oldest myths, sort of heroic myths, or you read the sort of epic stories of what are they called? There's the one from China, Monkey. Monkey is the hero, and there are these the journeys to the West. From India, of course, the great epics of the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. There are these individuals going on this life journey, and these are the kind of the heroic figures. But his thesis was that actually all of these stories, they're kind of the same. Everybody's going on the same journey. Now, of course, each journey is different, but they have common elements. And and there are common figures that keep turning up in these stories. The mentor figure, for example. There's always some wise teacher, and this is, of course, an expression of how tribal societies develop, how we develop in tribal society. Part of your life journey is when you come of age, they hand, the parents hand you over to the mentor. It might be the wise woman of the tribe, or the monk, or the shaman, right? So that's a part of our life journey. So his thesis was that actually we're all on this journey. So all of the stories of the world are telling this hero's journey, which is about our personal spiritual journey that we're all walking on. And it's expressed through all of the myths. It's an outward manifestation of our own psyche. And there's a lot of overlap with the teachings of Carl Jung. If you know anything about Jungian psychology and the archetypes and how they manifest in dreams and all of that. So these stories are like an outward manifestation of something that's common in the human psyche. And he said, but his ultimate thesis was that actually it's not just that all these stories, all these myths are essentially telling the same story. It's actually the story of all of our lives. We are all on this kind of hero's journey. And if we can understand that and understand our purpose and our destiny and our goal, then we can understand how to make our life more fruitful. And so he wrote about this at great length. And his writings have become they sort of underlie much of modern storytelling, especially in the realms of fantasy and science fiction. And of course, you'll find these figures coming up in. So this is another of his works on the power of myth. This is actually an interview and lecture series that's about with him speaking and his work, and it's really wonderful. So it's kind of about the individual discovering their potential self, right? So the kitten is I'm about to tell you a really, really bad joke. So I want you to see if you can guess the name of this kitten. It's a really hard question. This kitten has some special name. And I was told this by a friend many years ago, a very dear friend, and he always thought, he actually gave his cat this name, if I remember rightly. But this kitten has this sense of a greater destiny, right? It's going to evolve into something more powerful and keen-like, right? You're never going to guess it. So I'm going to tell you. This kitten's name is Great Purpose. Okay, terrible. I know, but I loved it. So we see this hero's journey sort of pattern, if you like, or life journey pattern reflected in all of the stories that resonate with us. And of course, Star Wars is one of the great modern myths. Right? But it's actually literally based on Campbell's work. George Lucas, of course, who wrote the original Star Wars stories and he produced them as films. Joseph Campbell was like his guru in a sense. He studied his work. He says very, very clearly that he was inspired by his idea of the hero's journey, and he followed that storyline. Also a reenactment of Rashomon, actually, which was a film by Kurosawa, the great Japanese director. Star Wars is kind of like almost a remake of Rashomon. So there's a very interesting point in this story. There are many, but there's one you might remember. This is the evil Darth Vader, who was corrupted by, he had tremendous power, but his power became corrupted. But he is actually the father of the young hero, and he tries to tempt him to join him and to succumb to the temptation of power. And there's this famous line, Luke, you can destroy the Emperor. He has foreseen this. It is your destiny. Join me, and together we can rule the galaxy as father and son. And this is, a lot of people quote this last piece especially. They say, together we can rule the galaxy. Okay, so it's the classic evil, corrupted, sort of dark wizard trying to tempt the young, emerging wizard to the dark side, as they say in Star Wars, right? This story, this sort of scene, you'll see that reenacted in many myths and stories, because we do come to points where we have to make a choice, and we're all at times tempted by some sort of inner negativity or darkness. So this is a very human thing, actually. Of course, in this story, it's exaggerated, but the reason hundreds of millions of people memorize this scene is because it resonates with them. And even though their life may not be quite as obviously dramatic as Star Wars, if you really think about it, our lives are full of drama. A lot of it's self-created. A friend of mine calls it neurodrama. He's a psychologist, of course, but it's it's all of these stories that we see in the Marvel films and Pixar movies and all of the sort of adventure story films, especially, but actually in most films and most of these kind of stories, it's a reenactment of our own journey in some way. It sort of represents our psyche. Here's another famous one, and this, of course, is a scene from Lord of the Rings, where Frodo is with the great mentor Gandalf. So you see the same sort of thing. He's the wise teacher is there. The young sort of innocent but the hero is starting on his journey, and he's learning about the power of the ring. And much later on, towards the culmination of the story, he actually succumbs to the dark power, and he's actually defeated by it, but he's saved. But the moment when he's supposed to destroy the ring and destroy the evil Lord of the Rings, he actually breaks, and he can't do it, because the lesson here is very subtle. Actually, this is one of, as anyone who knows me knows that I'm always sort of reinterpreting Lord of the Rings. The great, if you like, what's subtle, what's really different about this story, I think, from many others, is it's not obvious. Usually the hero overcomes the temptation, when they're really tested. But Frodo doesn't. He actually fails. And the lesson is, it's to do, in my view, it's to do with the whole idea of self-conceit, that we actually don't have the power to overcome the negativity without divine help. This is actually the theme of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's what makes Alcoholics Anonymous work. And there's well, I'll tell you a story actually from, I wasn't planning to, but some of you may, another obsession of mine is rock music, classic rock. The great guitarist Eric Clapton, who is clearly, one of the great, modern musicians. But he had a very long, dark period in his life of addiction. He was tremendously addicted, first to heroin and then to alcohol. And he was like one of the most famous musicians in the world. He had more money than he knew what to do with, but he was utterly miserable and his life was in ruins. And he became desperate and he admitted himself to a rehabilitation clinic. And of course, by the way, some people consider that the Lord of the Rings story, one of the sub-themes is actually about addiction. It's certainly about addiction to power, but it can also be considered as a metaphor about addiction. Anyway, Eric Clapton, he had real addiction. He was addicted to alcohol, which is considered by experts to be one of the most difficult addictions, physical addictions, to give up. And he admitted himself to a rehabilitation clinic, the best clinic that money could buy, great psychologists and everything. And he went through this program for 3 months. And at the end of the program, he was free. He was able to let it go. He felt he could go without taking a drink and not being tempted. And he continued his life and everything improved. And it was like going great for 1 or 2 years. And then he made a fatal error. He got overconfident and he thought he could take a drink. And that was the beginning of, that's what all the real alcoholics will tell you. You should never do this, right? You should always remember that you can break any time. So he took a drink and he fell back into the addiction and his whole life fell apart again. He went back to the rehabilitation, but he was really worried now because he wasn't sure if he could beat it. And he went through the rehab program and he came towards the end of it. And all the psychologists were saying, you're doing great, you're fine, you've really got this beat this time. And he was terrified. And he writes about this in his autobiography, which is beautifully written. He's an amazing writer. He's a genius. So, he writes good books. So when he's writing about it, I was reading this and I really felt like his terror that he couldn't control himself and he couldn't conquer his addiction. And there was this moment of utter despair. And in that moment, he writes about this and he says, in that moment of, I'd reached the bottom and I just had nothing left. I didn't know how to defeat this. And I was fooling all the psychologists, but I couldn't fool myself. And he said, I don't have any particular religious belief, but I do have some sense of a higher power. And in that moment, I just fell on my knees and I asked for help for the first time in my life. And he said, in that moment, he lost the desire for alcohol forever. And when I was reading this, honestly, my hair was standing on end and I thought, this is a divine intervention in the life of this man whom I admire. And he overcame it. But he did it through surrender, then accepting, okay, I don't have the power to do this. My ego cannot do this. I have to let go and if you like, depend on grace or providence or some sort of support from the spiritual world. And he found it. And that's actually what is symbolized in this Lord of the Rings story. Even though it's an outward series of actions, Frodo could not overcome his addiction to the ring, and it was considered impossible. Even Gandalf would not touch the ring because he didn't trust himself. The greatest, the wisest person in the whole world, basically, he did not trust himself with this power. So this poor little innocent hobbit, finally he succumbed. He claimed it as his own, which was completely absurd because he's just a little guy. And then it was taken from him by this kind of another victim of the power, and it was destroyed. But I consider this an amazing piece of storytelling because it's doing more than just your typical, the hero overcomes his desire for power or whatever it is. It doesn't always work like that. But this was more important that it was giving us this this sort of lesson about the power of divine intervention, which was a fundamental belief of Tolkien, the author, who was a devout Catholic and believed in divine intervention, which is kind of what Christianity is all about in one sense. So, I have a question for you. Who's your hero? Who's somebody you admire? And they can be from mythology. Let's start with mythology. Is there somebody from a story you know and love, or maybe somebody in real life that you've heard about or read about, that's somebody that you think, wow, they did something amazing in their life. I really look up to them. I think that's incredible. And then, so I want you to think of, it doesn't have to be your greatest, you may have many heroes or heroines. I certainly do. Pick one. Okay, and this I do want you to put in the chat. Tell us first, who is somebody that you admire and love and really inspires you? So let's just go out of the screen sharing and take a look at this question, because I think that's kind of important. Okay, so share with us, who's somebody your hero? So I've already told you, one of mine is Frodo. And of course, some of you might share that, or you might have your own. So who's someone you feel, again, from a story, can be mythological, or might be historical, or might be somebody living today, that is a hero figure to you? And the second part, of course, is what was their purpose? What drove them? What was it that they pursued and overcame or succeeded in that helped to make them great, if you like? You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to tell you about a couple more of mine while I'm waiting. You can add those in the chat in a minute. All right. So here are a couple of mine. Let me find where I was. Well, you can see him when I gave the game away. So one of I have my heroes or heroines in two categories. I kind of categorize them as kind of more spirit on the spiritual side, and others more in what they've done in the world, on a more sort of might be political, or doing some big service, or making some big change. So one of the ones who always jumps to mind for me is this man, Nelson Mandela. And you could say, and I read his autobiography, as some of you may have. It's called, he was in jail for a long part of his life. He spent 25 years in jail, I think it was. And because he was a freedom fighter with the ANC against the apartheid regime in South Africa. And okay, we got some, yeah. Oh, Anandamurti. Okay, thank you. So Anandamurti is my guru also. So from Ananda Dev, universal empathy. Albert Ellis, I don't know who that. Reason and rationality. Mythical metaphors can also inspire curiosity and insights. They also seem to be a subjective escape from objective reality, conflating fiction with fact. Claims about inerrant scriptures, hundreds of gods, religious dogma. Okay. Krishnendu was also thinking of Mandela and also Mahatma Gandhi. Okay, let's be curious to hear some more. I'm going to tell you a little bit about why Mandela is one of my heroes. In a way, basically, the reason he won a Nobel Peace Prize, you probably know that, but he was asked to share it with the white South African president who was his enemy. And he did. And I forget his name, and I don't really, because I don't, okay, I forget the guy's name. But you could say, most people would probably agree, who know a bit about the history. The greatness of Mandela was his ability to forgive. And he and Bishop, another great man, Desmond Tutu, after Mandela's ascension to the presidency, he became the first president, of course, of free South Africa. And he was old by then. He had gone through most of his life in jail. Can you imagine? They'd taken his life from him and had been so brutal, this regime, but he agreed to make peace. And the big thing that basically South Africa was on the brink of what would have been a terrible, bloody civil war. It would have been indescribably horrific. And Mandela prevented it because he forgave his enemies. And not just that, he instituted a process of forgiveness that enabled people to come to terms with the awful atrocities and oppression that had gone on for years, and somehow resolve it. So there wasn't. It was a huge step towards resolving the bitterness and hatred that would never have. I can't see how it would have been resolved otherwise. So they instituted this program of what was the name of it? Peace and justice or something. No, there was a special term for it, where people that were accused of crimes, like like torturing people who were in prison, black people who were in prison, or murdering them, which happened lots. Reconciliation. Thank you. It was something in reconciliation, exactly. So he and Desmond Tutu instituted this, and there's an amazing story. There are hundreds and thousands of stories. It's all on record of people come to the court, and they would say, well, this person murdered my son when he was in prison. He was just arrested for nothing, or whatever. Or they tortured my daughter, or people. It was brutal. But peace and reconciliation, I think that was it. And there's this amazing story of an officer in the police force who was quite a senior officer, and he confessed. And his accuser was the mother of the young man he had tortured and killed. And they're in the court together, and all the court's there, and this officer was feeling he had this tremendous guilt. And this was the thing that was so healing, actually. It allowed the perpetrators of these awful crimes to confess and not be punished. That was the thing. They could confess, but they would not receive any punishment. And that was like revolutionary. But it was a healing. It was a sort of a spiritual healing, and it was incredible. And this story was like embodied it. And it's difficult to tell because it's so emotional. This woman was in the court, the mother of the young man who'd been tortured and murdered by this officer. And the judge, and these judges had a very challenging role. The judge said to the woman, he said, do you have anything to say to this man who killed your son? And she went up to him and she said, yes, I do. She said, you have taken away my only son, who's our only son. You have taken away my only son. So now I want you to be my son. And you can imagine the scene, like nobody expected this. And she said, you have to take the place of my son, and I will treat you as my son. And like, this was what Mandela enabled. Hundreds and thousands of stories like this because of his example of being able to forgive them for imprisoning him for most of his life unjustly. So this incredible model of forgiveness literally prevented a very likely bloody war. So he's one of my heroes. I know the son of his finance minister, and he gave him a Bhavanam Kevalam Kirtan CD as a gift. He met with Mandela and gave him some Anandamaga books. And that was a nice story. But so heroes, Dalai Lama, yeah, for sure. He's one of mine. St. Francis of Assisi, yeah, I got to echo that. Let's have a look at a few more. So this is his book. I really recommend this beautiful book. Very powerful. Some of you may know this man. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago. But you may recall the movement, the Occupy Wall Street, which was when in the US, if you live in the US, you might probably remember this. Occupy Wall Street was this amazing movement, a very spontaneous people movement, highlighting the fact that 1%, actually it's more like 0.1% of the population in the US own most of the wealth, and it causes tremendous unnecessary, unjust suffering. So they were highlighting that. And there was this enormous Occupy Wall Street movement that went across the US and actually went international. The very first person to be arrested in this movement was this man. he's a friend of mine. He's an acharya in Anandamaga, like me. He was a monk, Dada Prana Krishnananda. And they were in Brooklyn Bridge in New York, and they were blocking the bridge, and the police came and started arresting everyone. It was a peaceful demonstration. This Dada was sitting in meditation, and he refused to open his eyes or move. So the police, they couldn't get him to open his eyes and stop meditating. So they picked him up bodily like this and carried him away. And so I think for him, he was expressing his purpose. He was standing for justice, and I thought that was wonderful. He was a great man. So there's a little story from real life for you. Al Gore, an interesting character. Now he's not a saint, but I think his story is very interesting because he thought he had one purpose, but then he discovered another purpose. And when he speaks about this, he of course was the one who many would say was cheated of the presidency of the United States by the Republican Party and the Supreme Court. So he didn't become the president. He was the vice president of the US under Clinton for 8 years. And then he was almost elected as president. And this was a very disputed election. Anyway, he didn't become president. So he thought his purpose was to become the president. But after that, he went on to create this, first a slideshow that would be a film called An Inconvenient Truth. And of course, it's about global warming and climate change. And he's built this incredible movement. And I went to one of the training programs with him and 2,000 other people for 4 days. And you do all this, you learn all about climate change really in depth. And it was amazing and inspirational. And so he went through a big life change and found I would say he found his true purpose. And he was forced, by the way, interesting. Many of the young people that were inspired by his movement and have joined it and support it, they're the bulk of it. Climate change, who are the activists? All the young people, because they're going to be here in 40 years' time. And I don't think I'll be 105 or 104 in 40 years' time. Probably not going to be here. So all these young people, they're like fired up. And they made him become vegan because he was not a vegetarian. And then they were hassling him because they said, this is hypocritical. The meat industry is one of the worst, polluters of the environment. It's just as bad as cars and all that. And he actually became vegan because they told him to, and he said he had to do it to be consistent. So some of you might think that's pretty cool. Okay, back to Joseph Campbell. So he said, you're the hero of your own story. That was his thesis, right? So I want to look at a few. So I'm going to ask you another question. I want to go back to your purpose. So I want you to think more specifically now and break it into two. Like I said, maybe an outer person. It might be something you're doing this month, or your purpose this month might be to, I don't know, teach a class teach some people about something really that you think is going to really help them. Or it might be, I have a friend in Washington, D.C. He's organizing a program. It's called Food for All. And there's a lot of homeless people, a lot of people without enough food in America at the moment. Hard to believe, but it's very true. The program that he's organizing, they feed 2,500 people per day in Washington, D.C. So that's his pranadharma right now. He's a monk like me, and that's what he's doing with a lot of his time. So that's his pranadharma for the last couple of months, and will continue to be, no doubt, for a while. So those are kind of big examples. But that's a big example. But there are lots of little things we do that are important. Maybe you teach children, or you do something that will make a difference to other people's lives. Okay. To vote. Now that's a good idea. There's something we can at least. I can't. I'm not a U.S. citizen, but I'm a resident, but not a citizen. But there's something you could do. I didn't re-admit somebody. But beyond that, what could you do? Well, you could inspire other people to vote. Smile. That's nice. Yeah, there's lots of little things, big things, in between things. But what are you doing? What are you doing to fulfill your purpose? So you've got an outer purpose, but the next part of the question, of course, is what are you doing about your inner purpose? Okay. So I examine this regularly. And I want to suggest this to you as an exercise you could take away. Studying and meditating, yeah, for sure. Teaching yoga, that's kind of passing it on, right? Anushila, that's lovely. And, you know, I've met lots of people who somebody taught them yoga and they see it as the turning point in their lives. You might not realize that when you're teaching someone, talking to someone, if it's the right person, it's the right point, and you just happen to say the right thing without even realizing it, it can have an extraordinary ongoing impact and sort of, you know, you're creating waves. I get that from my students. Like years later, I just had a student write to me. He just, out of the blue, I hadn't heard from, I mean, I hear from him maybe once in every couple of years. I taught him meditation 8 years ago. He's living on the other side of the country, and he just sent me $200 donation through PayPal or something, and he just said, Dad, I just felt like I wanted to pass it forward for a bit, because you know what you taught me in our classes at UC Berkeley, when you taught me meditation, it really changed my life. And of course, you can imagine how I felt. I thought, wow, that's really made me feel like, okay, that's reinforced my sense that I'm following my purpose. That's kind of outer purpose, right? So, but we all have different versions of that, right? So let's hear a bit more from you about your outer and inner purposes. Thanks, Ananda. So you're a role model for sustainability, really. Solar panels. Oh, this is a lesson for all of us. Solar panels on the house, an electric hybrid car and motorcycle, living simply, frugally, teaching a class on climate change. Oh my God. On mass extinction and teaching a yoga class. Fantastic. That is, you know, imagine if, you know, a lot more people did all of that. Lessening our sort of, you know, carbon footprint and teaching, you know, really important things. That's fantastic. Thanks, Anand. Dev. Cool. So, you know, you can write down, you know, as I said, you don't need to share this if you want to just, you know, you can, I really do urge you to write something down, because that kind of, you know, cements it, makes it somehow more real. And as I said, I often reflect. I do it in a written form, and I use mind maps, and I'm a sort of visual person. I like to do it with colored pens, and I'll sit down every month or two. I'll sit down and really just reevaluate. Okay, what am I doing? What's making the most impact? Where can I direct my energy and resources to where I can make the most difference? And I really encourage you to do that regularly and spend a while on it. Playing with children, and that's for me, that's like fun. I love doing that. But because I don't have children of my own, so it's kind of probably not such a novelty when you have your own children. Reconnect adult women to their inner children. That's lovely. In October, I want to hear about that. Isabel, it's Vita. We've got to have a call, and I want to know what that is, including yourself. Very nice, with your inner child. Yep, that's lovely. Okay, so inner purpose and outer purpose, very important. Okay, we're going to look at a few more. So the examples I gave before were sort of mythological. Do you remember Luke Skywalker and his sort of dark mentor, who wasn't really his mentor, that was Darth Vader, and then Frodo and Gandalf from the sort of the modern mythology. And then some of the sort of outer heroes like, you know, Mandela and so forth. But these next few are people who I look up to as sort of spiritual heroes. Well, I'm starting with one of my heroines, actually, as who knows who this is? I've talked about her before. You probably remember. I'm so inspired by her life. Well, to both of them, but the girl is the one who's best known. The older woman, the adult, is her teacher. But she's the mentor figure in this story. And this is such a great story because it's, again, you've got the kind of hero figure or heroine and the mentor. And it's played out again and again in our lives. Anybody remember? This is Helen Keller. So Helen Keller was blind and deaf and couldn't speak until Anne Sullivan, her teacher, taught her how. And that's an amazing, beautiful, inspiring story. And she grew up to become this inspirational teacher and speaker, and she was a great philanthropist and did amazing things with her life that, you couldn't imagine of somebody with her disabilities. It was just, she's such an inspiration to so many people. Inspired me when I was a little kid, just hearing her story. So these are some of the big spiritual figures that I refer to. Vivekananda, of course. This is a beautiful illumination of Saint Teresa of Avila from Spain. Of course, in her time there were no photographs, and these are, their stories are really mind-blowing. Vivekananda was, of course, the first yogi to come to the West and came to the United States more than 100 years ago. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, amazing life story, and somebody who wasn't just the one, he was the one who really introduced kirtan, chanting and singing, devotional singing, and popularized it in India. And it was an older tradition, but he sort of revived it, and he actually invented and spiritually empowered the Hare Krishna mantra. That it's since been adopted by the ISKCON group, which is not really, they don't actually understand Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in my opinion, but they propagated it. So did George Harrison. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu propagated devotional chanting and kirtan, but he also was really stood up for against the caste system in India and against religious discrimination. So he was a Brahmin from this highest caste, and the Brahmin was not supposed to have disciples from the lower caste, or especially not Muslim disciples, because they were not considered, whatever, like they were equal. So he refused to accept that. He accepted disciples of all types, and he was enormously popular. But in the end, he was murdered for this by the people who were trying to oppress, or hated people from the other religion, or narrow-minded people. They killed him. So he was a martyr in the end. Beautiful man. Of course, the Dalai Lama, everybody loves the Dalai Lama. He's done amazing work bringing meditation to the world through not only his own example and his order of monks and the whole, Tibetan Buddhist tradition, but he's been instrumental in pioneering and funding through his foundation the research. Much of the research into meditation is funded by the Dalai Lama's foundation. It's enabled the validation of meditation practice throughout the world. This is, again, way pre-photography. This is a beautiful picture, actually, from the ISKCON people, of Krishna, revealing himself to Arjuna, his disciple, as this divine being. And Krishna is interesting because he kind of brings the two together. He was not only a great spiritual guru and inspiration to a whole generation in India thousands of years ago, but he was also a great, you could say, a spiritual revolutionary. He fought against some of the corrupt kings and people that were really, really evil people, actually. And so he was sort of both the inner and outer, inner guru and outer sort of spiritual political leader. So that's the question I'm going to leave you with. What is your inner purpose? And I want you to reflect on this. The hero journey is inside of you. Tear off the veils and open the mystery of yourself. Joseph Campbell, I love him. And this is a cartoon from a friend of mine. She's a Buddhist, and she really is good at capturing beautiful ideas graphically. Her name's Leah Perlman. And if you haven't done so already, you can, if you happen to have an iPhone, you can download the Bliss Time app for free from the Apple Store. The Google Play version means the Android version is being developed as we speak. It should be ready in November or December. And that's actually been accelerated through our planetary leadership training, because 2 volunteers that are helping to build that came from the program. So what goes around comes around. Thank you all so much. Very good to see you. I think we're about to end. How do we do that? I finished right on time. I'm so good. I was not sure if I was on time. Your life purpose. Oh, lovely. Okay. to love, see love, be love, give love. Namaskar, namaskar, everybody. Lovely to see you. So just to remind you, every Tuesday, we meet at 7 p.m. California time for an hour. So that's our regular Kirtana meditation with a little sort of spiritual teaching or discussion at the end, but it's just a 1 hour. And then once a month, like today, on the first Tuesday of the month, which today is, I give the longer class on the power of something is going to be for the next 10 months. I haven't actually decided what the next one is, but I hope to see you there. Thank you all, everybody. Love to see you. Lovely to see you, Patty, here for the first time. Maybe you can find a microphone, but in the next time and join us a bit more fully. That would be lovely. And really good to see you all. And I'm told, Julin, or Yulin, sorry, I'm not sure how your name's pronounced, Yulin Lee. My friend Jana, she told me she's going to invite me to speak to your book club.
Yes.
Sometime.
So can I invite anyone here who is interested to join a book discussion? We'll discuss the book of Dada. Then the name of the book is Close Your Eyes and Open Your Mind. So if anyone here is interested to join our book discussion, please leave your email in the chat so we can contact you with the time and the Zoom link.
Thank you, Yulin. Yeah, of course. I appreciate that. And nice to have people reading that as a group. That's really kind of cool. I could, and I'll ask Jana to give me the link to that event and put that in we can add that to the next email that we circulate to everybody. That'd be nice.
Yeah, that would be great.
Get a few more people.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope to meet you sometime over on the East Bay. When things are a little bit more normal, we'll get together and meditate because we're not that far away, right?
Yeah.
Very good. Thanks, everybody. Namaskar. Oh, okay. Ananda Dev is interested in the book discussion. Do you want to grab his email there, Yulin?
Sure. Just hold on a second.
Copy it before we go.
I need to.
You need to copy and paste it.
Okay. So your name is Ananda Deva?
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Very good.
Thank
you, everyone. Namaskar. See you next week.
See you.
Farewell.
Dadaji, what were the chords to your kirtan?
Okay. And I know Anandi's gone now, but she's in Hawaii. She wanted to know as well. I just have to look. I don't know. I don't think about them. So I've got the capo on the 3rd fret. You can see there,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Standard tuning, and I'm playing C. What I'm.
Okay.
No, start on G. That's C. That's A minor. Then F. G. C. A minor. F. It's the same. C. A minor. F. Yes, round and around. G.
Okay.
That's it. All right.
Got it. Thank you so much.
That comes from Arun in New York, who's a wonderful musician friend of mine.
Yeah, it sounded familiar. It's really nice.
Yeah. Good. Good to see you all.
Thank you. Have a good week.
Farewell. Good night.